Okay, thanks for staying with me here. We're on to part three of the introduction of my FAS Plus score. This is the name I've come up with, I guess. It kind of looks like Fast. I don't know if I should call it Fast or Fast Plus or whatever. But you've learned about F as in form, A as in ability. So now on to S. But before we get to that, just a quick reminder, why did I do this? I wanted to create this evaluation tool to help sort of create a quick score that I could look at when assessing whether to buy or sell or trade for a player. I'm only using sort of credibly sourced and a limited number of credibly sourced locations. I'm assigning scores to them that are sort of 1, 2, 4, 6, things like that, so that I can sort of add those up and have a very simple score to look at. And I've said simple a couple times. Really, it has to be something that is intuitive and that we can just quickly reference and doesn't really bog us down trying to calculate it on the fly, or that we don't actually fully understand how we got the numbers we got. So we looked at form and ability, so S is scarcity, and this is actually the most important one to me. At the end of the day, this is a game of economics, and old supply and demand theory suggests that when you have limited supply, value goes up, and so scarcity to me is a really kind of under talked about aspect of Sorare. Sorare is fully based on scarcity. You have unique cards, and you have super rares and rares, and then common and whatever this next tier that they're going to introduce is going to be, and they're all based on scarcity. And I mean, really, the whole NFT trend or craze or marketplace is based on scarcity as well. So I also love that it's objective. I mean, you've quite legitimately know how many cards there may be of a player, but it's also nuanced in that, okay, what about the first card? What about the first card of a certain year, in their rookie year, if you will? What about a card with their national team jersey on? What about a card where they've won a prize, an award, or things like that? So you get this kind of objectivity. There's not sort of no debate on some of those, but then you also can dig a bit deeper and find value within those numbers. And then it's just relational. So we truly can compare the number of cards of one player to another and assess whether it's not just based on things like talent and form, which at the end of the day are still subjective measures. This is really the most objective. This is about just how many cards are in circulation and what is the value of that card. So this one I actually give the most, score to, and then ability is second, and then form is third. So there's two key areas that I looked at. So you'll remember that I basically used 2 scores for form, 2 for ability, and likewise there's 2 for scarcity. So the first one might sound kind of simple, but it's actually just positional. So it's just around what position they play on the pitch. So this plays into scarcity because quite literally there are less goalkeepers playing world football than there are midfielders on any given pitch. If a team's playing a 4-4-2, then that means that there's 1 keeper, 2 forwards, and 8 mids and defenders. If they're playing a 4-3-3, that number changes slightly. It's kind of 1, 3, and 7. But I mean, you get my point that there's much less of those. And if we actually look in the buying market, if you will. Right now, at this moment, there are 3,000 goalkeepers for sale. There's double that for forwards, and then there's say, what is that, about 22,000. So there's sort of 3.5 or 4 times the amount of forwards as a defender or midfielder. So everything that I just said in terms of like on the pitch itself, in terms of a starting lineup or in a wider roster, if you include the bench, and then of course even just the number of cards in circulation, it all sort of points to this kind of doubling effect or an increase in scarcity. So by that nature, I'm giving points accordingly. So if you are a forward, if you're a goalkeeper, it's worth 4 points. If you're a forward, it's 2. And a mid or a defender, it's 1. that number is actually wrong. Let me make that quick change. There we go. And one quick thing, I have age listed here just as a really quick reference, just to glance at. And you can see here, I clearly, for these players, I was looking at sort of U23 players. I've got countless ones I'm going to go through here, but we'll do that another time. But I was assigning a score, and actually, even though this is orange, it's not calculated at the end. It was something I was toying with, and I must say that age was something that was the hardest one, or the last column that I chose not to include. I was battling because I tend to be somebody who likes the kind of younger players, the ones with potential and all of that, and invest in those. And a lot of my strategy personally is to invest in these types of players. But there was a couple of things. One is that I was worried about a little bit of a double counting with the potential number over here on ability. I felt that, younger players tend to have potential scores that are maybe a bit higher, especially the good ones you're after. And then the other one for me was that age isn't always a good thing. And so it was hard to kind of reward somebody who's 19 because you could also argue, or if someone's 17 or 18, they actually have a greater risk of not fulfilling their potential. And so then I started wondering, well, should I give like the higher score for like 23-year-olds where they're like just about on the cusp of maturing fully into who they're going to be. And it just got a bit complex, and I decided to just not include this whatsoever, but that I still include age as just a reference point as I'm like skimming this and stuff. So in fact, I'm just gonna do this right now so that we don't there. So that's the first bit of scarcity, and then the other one is quite obviously just the cards, the number of cards. So if we scroll here, what I've done is I've put down the actual number of rare cards in circulation and the number of that have been minted, rather, and the number of super rare and the uniques. And then what I did was I calculated the rare plus super rare. So let me explain that for a second. So there are rare is 1 to 100 of any given season, and so these are given a point of 1. But for super rare, because there's 10 of them, then in theory, every one of them is equal to 10 of these, right? If there's 100 maximum and there's 10 of these, then one card is worth 10 of these. So this score is basically 10 times 10 plus 96, and this is 4 times 10 plus 43, and so on. Now, why wouldn't I include unique? My worry with unique was that it just kind of blows the number out of the water, and it's hard to calculate. So the second that this card goes from 0 to 1, it all of a sudden becomes such a much larger number, or if this goes from 1 to 2, because basically this would be worth 100. There's only one of these for every 100 of these, and so on. So and also it's a whole different world in terms of who can afford these and who's playing in that, and that really isn't the target that I'm after in these videos. So I just decided to exclude it. It's here to see. Certainly has some insight, but really I'm just counting this. So as you can see, I mean, there's some really great players here that I'm kind of scouting, but Diatta, like 337, that doesn't mean he has that many cards, but he has sort of the value of that because there's 19 super rares and there's 147 of his cards, versus say somebody like Brenner here. I mean, at the time that I was plugging this in, this probably increased because he's in the MLS and there's a lot of those cards kind of being pushed out through the auction. But I mean, at the time, maybe a few weeks ago, really only 33. So from a scarcity point of view, especially if you're into getting a card like a low number, maybe the first or second or third card in print, the one, in almost like a rookie year, if you will, not so much the player is a rookie, but the first time that their NFT card has been produced. That's kind of something that I'm really curious about and keen on. So these types of ones get me really interested. And I might forego some of these players despite how good they are. I mean, these are definitely some young up-and-comers with great potential, but I just know from a scarcity point of view, I'm going to have a hard time selling this card in 5 years or so, because not only are there a lot of them already, but then each season new cards are being minted, and some buyers out there aren't going to care about the first year of a card. They might just want a current season card because of the utility in the weekly games. So, with that, because this one matters a lot to me, as well as the positional scarcity, you score a few more points up here. So if you have less than 100, then you get 6 points. If you have about a score of 100 to 200, it's 4 points, and then 200 plus 2 points. And so you can see that while form, the maximum amount of points you could get was 4, ability, the maximum amount of points you could get was 6. Here you could get effectively 10, and also, or 10 if you're a keeper, or 8 if you're say a forward or so. So without further ado, what I then do, and apologies, this spreadsheet's kind of messy. Like, I probably can clean it up, and I'll get to a point that it's maybe a little more presentable and shareable, and these types of things. But this really shows you the guts of it. So then I started to plug in what a 2-week average price was, what the best offer was at the time. These are old; it's a couple weeks now, I think. And then ultimately just added these numbers up. So if we look at some of these guys here, Raphael, Leo, comes up at 14, and you can just scroll down and see where these guys sit. Maybe you want to pause the video here and just kind of scan it all and things like that. But then what's super interesting here is then looking at it from a cost point of view. So if we look at the 2-week average and we divide these points, this 12, into this score, we actually see that you're paying 0.009 Ethereum for each of these FAS plus points that I've created. He's worth way more. This was definitely about a month ago. He's worth, I think, double that, or he's priced at double that right now, more like this area. So I've also kind of put in the best, and then you can kind of see this. So you can actually target, you could look at somebody like this and say, okay, this is actually good value for money. I'm going to go after Pinamonti here. But again, the challenge is that these numbers change so frequently. So it's a bit tricky for me to do that. And then the only other thing I kind of played with was, well, if form is kind of my least valued, and if it really is based on a bit of fluctuation, seasonality, whatever, what does just ability and scarcity look like to me? And because that really is looking at maybe a longer term valuation. And then how does that play out on a sort of a cost per point basis? So that's where I'm at. I'm still kind of playing with these, and what are the numbers that are going to make sense? How do we translate this in a way that is usable? But certainly from just purely points here, it's really interesting to be able to just look at this and compare Timothy Way versus Rodrigo and things like that. So there you go. Would love to hear your comments, what you thought of this. I don't know, changes you'd make, things you'd add, things you'd subtract. I don't know. I'll keep working at this, and we'll start to dive into different players and stuff, and try to make this as usable as possible. So thanks for following. Thanks for watching 3 whole videos here. Be sure to like and comment and share so that people can check this out. We'll talk soon. Take care. Bye-bye.